On Christmas Eve, my son told me to stay away from his wife. He didn't whisper it. He didn't soften it. He didn't hesitate. He stepped between us, looked me in the eye, and said, "Stay away from us." Then the door closed behind me. I left without a word. 48 hours later, my phone rang. "Mom, about the mortgage," I listened. And when I finally spoke, I said 4 words that changed everything. But to understand why that door closed, you need to understand what I already knew before I knocked on it. If you're watching from somewhere far away, tell me your city in the comments. And stay with me until the end, because this story isn't about revenge. It's about the moment a woman stops financing her own disrespect. My name is Vivian Harper. I am 73 years old, a widow of 8 years, a retired corporate auditor. For 4 decades, companies paid me very well to find what other people hoped I would overlook. Patterns, discrepancies, intent. I built my life and my wealth quietly. Index funds, municipal bonds, commercial property partnerships, slow money, disciplined money. My late husband Thomas used to say, "Wealth whispers, ego shouts." After he passed, I kept whispering. My son Daniel Harper prefers shouting. Daniel is 46. A commercial real estate broker with expensive suits and carefully curated confidence. He measures success in square footage and Instagram lighting. His wife, Camille, measures it in brand collaborations and follower counts. Camille is beautiful, strategic, always camera-ready. She believes perception creates reality. I believe documentation reveals it. 3 months before Christmas, I noticed the first inconsistency. It wasn't dramatic, it never is. A $4,200 transfer from my secondary investment account into a joint liquidity pool Daniel had access to, originally set up years ago for temporary bridge financing. That was my mistake. Temporary accounts have a way of becoming permanent expectations. I didn't call immediately, I watched. Because patterns tell the truth, emotions try to hide. Another transfer 2 weeks later. Then a mortgage payment auto draft routed through that same pool. Interesting. Daniel had never told me I was covering their mortgage shortfall. He hadn't asked. He assumed, and assumptions about money are rarely innocent. I printed the statements, highlighted dates, cross-referenced timestamps. Then I scheduled a meeting, not with Daniel, with Claudia Mercer. Claudia is 69, sharp as surgical steel, and has protected more widows from quiet financial erosion than most people realize exists. I placed the folder in front of her. She didn't react emotionally. She flipped pages. "Has he noticed you've noticed?" she asked. "No," I replied. "Good." She leaned back. "If you want this to stop permanently, we don't confront first. We restructure first." So we did. Asset firewall, revoked secondary access, shifted liquidity controls, filed protective documentation, quietly notified my bank. Then she asked, "Do you want to pursue charges?" I paused. "No, not yet." Because I wanted to hear him say it. I wanted to see if he would choose honesty over entitlement. Christmas Eve seemed appropriate. Tradition makes people careless. I arrived at Daniel and Camille's house at 6:12 p.m. White columns, perfect wreath, designer lighting. Camille opened the door in a cream cashmere dress that probably cost more than my first car. "Vivian. Merry Christmas," she air-kissed me. Daniel appeared behind her, hand resting lightly at her waist. A subtle claim of allegiance. Sophie, my granddaughter, hovered near the staircase, 12 years old. Quiet eyes that miss nothing. Dinner was immaculate. Candles, crystal, curated laughter. Camille documented half the evening for social media. "Family gratitude," she captioned one photo. I watched Daniel pour wine from a bottle I recognized. I had purchased it for them last year. Interesting symmetry. Halfway through dinner, Camille mentioned renovations. "We're thinking of expanding the kitchen," she said casually. "Property value leverage," Daniel nodded. "It's an investment." "With whose liquidity?" I asked softly. The air shifted. Camille smiled, the kind that tightens at the edges. "What do you mean?" I folded my napkin neatly, reached into my handbag, removed the statements. "I mean," I said calmly, "these." I slid them across the table. Daniel's jaw tightened. Camille's fingers froze around her glass. "Vivian," Daniel began carefully, "if this is about the transfers." "It is." "They were temporary," Camille added quickly. "We were balancing some timing gaps." Without informing me, Daniel leaned back. "Mom, it's family money. It's all going to come to us eventually." There it was. Eventually. the most dangerous word in inheritance conversations. Camille's voice sharpened. We're building something, we thought you'd want to support growth. I do, I said, silence. But support is not the same as silent extraction. Camille's smile disappeared completely. Daniel's tone hardened. Why are you making this a confrontation on Christmas Eve? Because, I said softly, you assumed I wouldn't. That's when Sophie spoke quietly from the staircase. Dad said Grandma wouldn't notice. The room froze. Children rarely understand strategy, they repeat truth. Camille stood abruptly. That's enough. Daniel stood too, and then he did something I will never forget. He stepped between me and his wife, physically, as if I were the threat. Mom, he said, voice low and controlled, stay away from us. Not let's talk, not we'll fix it. Not even I'm sorry, stay away. Camille crossed her arms. If you're going to question our integrity, you don't need to be here. Daniel walked to the front door and opened it. I looked at him, not angry, not crying, just measuring. You're choosing this? I asked quietly. He didn't hesitate. Yes. The door remained open behind him. Cold December air spilled into the foyer. And I realized something important in that moment. When a man believes your money is already his, your boundaries feel like betrayal. I stood, smoothed my coat, looked at Sophie. Good night, I told her gently, then I walked out. The door closed behind me, and I left without another word. I did not argue, I did not defend, I did not threat. Because the restructuring had already been completed. What Daniel did not know, what Camille absolutely did not know, was that the liquidity pool they were quietly relying on had been sealed 12 days earlier. The following morning, their auto draft attempted to clear. It failed. I did not receive a call that day, or the next. But 48 hours later, at exactly 9:17 a.m., my phone rang. Daniel. I let it ring twice before answering. Mom, his voice was different, tighter. About the mortgage, I didn't interrupt. The payment didn't go through, he said. The account shows restricted access. Of course it does. I walked to my study window, looked at the frost over my garden. And, I asked, silence, then the question, did you change something? Yes, but not just something, everything. I could have explained, I could have justified. Instead, I simply said, we'll discuss it. Because the 4 words I eventually spoke, the ones that made the line go completely silent, were not for Christmas Eve. They were for consequences. And consequences, unlike gifts, arrive exactly when they're scheduled. Next, you'll see what Daniel discovered when he called again, and why Detective Raymond Cole's name entered this story sooner than anyone expected. Because when you build your life documenting truth, you never confront without preparation. And this was only the beginning. When Daniel called about the mortgage, he thought it was a glitch, a banking error, a temporary hold. A misunderstanding that could be smoothed over with the right tone. He still believed I was the same woman who would panic at his discomfort. He was wrong. Mom, the bank says restricted access. His voice was controlled, but I've spent 40 years listening to executives lie about numbers. I can hear fear hiding behind polish. Yes, I said, a pause. Yes, what? Yes, it's restricted. Silence stretched between us. You did that? He asked carefully. I adjusted my accounts. Why would you do that without telling us? There it was again. Without telling us? As if my assets were community property. I moved to my desk and opened the leather folder Claudia Mercer had prepared. Every transfer, every timestamp, every mortgage payment quietly routed through my liquidity account. Daniel, I said calmly, why would you assume continued access after Christmas Eve? His breathing changed. That was emotional, he replied. We were upset. No, you were exposed. That doesn't change financial structure, I said. In the background, I heard Camille's voice. Is she fixing it? Daniel covered the receiver poorly. I'm handling it. Handling it. He hadn't handled anything for months. Mom, he tried again, softening his tone, we just need this month covered. The market's tight, a deal fell through, it's temporary. Temporary is a word people use when they have no repayment plan. You've said temporary before, I replied. That's not fair. No, I agreed quietly. It isn't. There was a long silence. Then Daniel asked the question he didn't want to ask. Are you cutting us off? I looked at the framed photo on my desk. Thomas and I, 25 years old, standing in front of our first home. We built everything from scratch. I am correcting structure, I said. That's not an answer. It is. Camille's voice came through clearly now. This is manipulation, I almost smiled. No, I said gently. Manipulation is moving money without disclosure. Daniel's tone sharpened. You're overreacting? Am I? He exhaled hard. If this mortgage doesn't clear, it flags our credit. Investors see that. Investors, not family, not trust. Optics, you should have considered that before reallocating funds without consent. You never said no, he snapped. I never said yes. Silence again, this time heavier. You're my mother, he said finally, as if that ended the debate. And you're my son, I replied. That does not authorize entitlement. I ended the call first, then I picked up another phone. Claudia, I said when she answered, he's noticed. Of course he has, she replied calmly. How did he respond? Predictably. Good, that means he hasn't prepared. Prepare for what? For the next call. Claudia had warned me about this stage. When access is removed, panic reveals character. That afternoon, Daniel called again, this time louder. Mom, the bank said the entire secondary account was frozen pending internal review. Yes. You triggered a review? Yes. Why would you escalate this? Because escalation is the only language entitlement understands. You've been using a shared account structure beyond agreed parameters, I said evenly. That requires documentation. You're acting like we stole something. The word hung there. Stole. Interesting he chose it. Did you? Dead silence. Then Camille took the phone. Vivian, she said, voice clipped and sharp, we are not criminals. No one called you one. You're involving lawyers, you froze assets, that's hostile. Hostility, I replied softly, is stepping between your mother-in-law and accountability. She inhaled sharply. Daniel took the phone back. What do you want? He asked. There it was, not apology, not explanation, transaction. I want transparency, I said. We gave you that? No, you gave me silence. He didn't argue that. Because he couldn't, that evening I received a notification from my bank, an attempted transfer. Blocked. Daniel was testing the perimeter, I documented it. Time, IP address, amount. He was trying to move $8,700, not a small oversight. A pattern. The next morning I scheduled a meeting with Detective Raymond Cole, not to file charges, not yet, just to understand options. Detective Cole had the calm demeanor of a man who's seen too many family betrayals to be surprised by them. He listened without interruption as I laid out the timeline. Transfers, mortgage drafts, Christmas confrontation. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Harper, he said carefully, elder financial exploitation rarely starts loud, it starts assumed. I know, I replied. Do you want to pursue criminal action? I paused. Not because I didn't know the answer, because I understood the weight of it. Not today, I said, he nodded, but I want a record. That's wise. He handed me a card. If the pattern continues, you call me. Pattern, it was continuing. That night, Sophie texted me, a simple message. Grandma, are you mad at Dad? Children always ask the honest question. No, I wrote back, I am adjusting boundaries. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Dad says you're trying to control them. I stared at that for a moment. Control is when someone hides truth, I replied. Protection is when someone stops it. She didn't respond, but I knew she understood. The following morning, Daniel called again. His tone had shifted. Less anger, more calculation. Mom, we can restructure repayment. Repayment, interesting progression. For what? I asked. For whatever you think we owe, not admission. But not denial. Daniel, I said quietly, you've mistaken patience for permission. That's not fair. Fair would have been asking. He exhaled slowly. We'll sell the car, he offered. Sell whatever you need, I replied. You're serious? Yes. And if we can't? There it was, the real fear. If you can't manage your obligations without unauthorized access, I said calmly, then the structure was unstable to begin with. You'd let us lose the house? I thought about Christmas Eve. The open door, the words stay away. Yes, I said softly, I would. Silence flooded the line, and for the first time Daniel had no script, because this was not about money anymore, it was about power. And power shifts quietly long before it becomes visible. He doesn't yet know that Claudia has already begun drafting revisions to my estate. He doesn't know the secondary beneficiaries have changed. He doesn't know that the very thing he called eventual security is no longer guaranteed. And he certainly doesn't know what the 4 words will be when he calls next. But he will. Because when you build your life documenting everything, you never move emotionally, you move strategically. And this is only the second call. The third call came at 7:42 a.m. earlier than Daniel usually functions. Panic wakes people faster than ambition ever does. "Mom," he said without greeting, "we need to talk in person." "I prefer documentation," I replied. "This isn't a spreadsheet?" "No," I said calmly, "it's a pattern." Silence, then lower, "Camille thinks you're building a case against us." I didn't answer immediately because technically I was. "I'm building clarity," I said. "That sounds like something a prosecutor would say." "I was an auditor, Daniel. Clarity keeps people out of courtrooms." He exhaled sharply. "The bank flagged multiple attempted transfers as suspicious activity. They asked if I was being investigated." "Were you?" "Stop doing that." "Doing what?" "Answering questions with questions." I almost smiled. "When did you start assuming my assets were yours?" I asked gently. He didn't respond. Because that is not a comfortable timeline to revisit. Instead, he shifted strategy. "We were under pressure." "From whom?" "From life, from expectations, from maintaining stability." Stability. An interesting word for a household propped up by silent transfers. "You mean optics," I corrected. He didn't deny it. Daniel has always feared appearing small. As a child, if he lost a game, he blamed equipment. If he failed a test, the teacher was unfair. Image has always been oxygen to him. "I'm a broker, Mom," he continued. "My reputation is leverage. If word gets out that my own mother froze my accounts, I didn't freeze your accounts." "You know what I mean." "Yes," I said softly. "I do." In the background, I heard Camille. "Tell her about the refinance." Daniel lowered his voice. "We're restructuring the mortgage, short-term refinance, but we need liquidity proof to close." Liquidity proof. They needed my balance sheet to maintain their illusion. "And you expected to use mine," I finished. "It's temporary." There it was again. Temporary is a bridge built with no foundation. "I met with Claudia Mercer yesterday," I said. He went quiet. "You involved an estate attorney?" "Yes." "For what?" "To correct assumptions." He exhaled slowly. "You're changing the will." I didn't answer because silence is sometimes more precise than words. "Mom," he said carefully, "you always said everything would eventually come to us." I said I would provide responsibly. "That's the same thing." "No," I replied, "it isn't." He grew frustrated. "You're punishing us." "No. I'm protecting myself." "From your own son?" "Yes." The word landed heavier than I expected, but it was true. Later that afternoon, I received a call from Detective Raymond Cole. "Mrs. Harper," he said, calm as ever, "the bank forwarded additional attempted access reports." "I expected they would." "Your son tried initiating a power of attorney inquiry." That surprised me. "He did what?" "He contacted the bank claiming concern about cognitive decline." I closed my eyes briefly. Of course, when entitlement is threatened, character reveals itself. "He implied you may not be capable of managing complex assets." I almost laughed. At 73, I manage 4 diversified portfolios, 2 rental properties, and 3 municipal bonds without assistance. "I assume the bank rejected it," I said. "They did, but I need to ask directly, has anyone pressured you to sign financial authority documents?" "No." "Has anyone suggested you're unwell?" "Yes." "Who?" "My son." He was quiet for a moment. "Mrs. Harper," Detective Cole said gently, "this is how financial exploitation escalates. First access, then narrative, then control." "I know. And do you want to escalate this?" "Not yet." But the fact that Daniel was willing to question my mental capacity to regain access, that changed something. That evening, Sophie called, not texted, called. "Grandma," her voice was small. "Yes, darling, Dad said you might be confused about money." Children don't filter manipulation well, they repeat it plainly. "Do I sound confused?" I asked softly. "No." "Then trust what you observe." She hesitated. "I heard Mom say the house could go if you don't help." "The house, the columns, the granite, the image. Do you know what keeps a house standing?" I asked. "The foundation?" "Yes." "And what's ours?" she asked. "Honesty." She was quiet then. "Are we losing it?" "That depends on your parents' decisions," I replied gently. She didn't argue. She understands cause and effect better than they do. After we hung up, I opened my laptop. Claudia had sent the revised estate draft. Beneficiaries adjusted, trust conditions inserted, distribution contingent on financial responsibility benchmarks. Eventual security was no longer automatic, it was earned. The next morning, Daniel showed up at my door unannounced. That was new, he rarely visits without purpose. I opened the door calmly, he looked tired, less polished, less certain. "Can we talk?" he asked. "You're here," I replied. He stepped inside, glanced around as if expecting surveillance. "I never thought you'd go this far. You never thought I'd notice." He ran a hand through his hair. "Camille is panicking. Investors are asking questions. The refinance stalled because we couldn't show liquidity stability." "Because you don't have it," I said. "We would if you—" "No," he stared at me. "You're really going to let us fall? I am not holding you up." He paced. "You're rewriting history?" "No," I said softly. "I'm rewriting boundaries." He stopped pacing. "Fine," he said finally. "Let's talk numbers. What do you want?" There it was again. Transaction, not remorse, not accountability, deal-making. "I want acknowledgement," I said. "For what?" "For moving money without consent. We're family. That is not a defense." His jaw tightened. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "No," I replied. "You did." Silence. He tried one more angle. "If Dad were alive, if your father were alive," I interrupted calmly, "you would not have tried this." He looked away, because he knew I was right. Daniel has always respected strength. He only challenges softness. And for years, I allowed him to mistake gentleness for weakness. That ends now. As he walked toward the door, he paused. "If the mortgage defaults," he said, not turning around, "it becomes public record." "Yes. You're willing to live with that?" "I already am." He left without slamming the door. Which tells me something important. He's recalculating. What he doesn't know, what Camille doesn't know, is that Detective Cole is now officially monitoring the attempted power of attorney narrative. And that Claudia has placed additional asset shields into motion. If Daniel continues, this stops being a family dispute. It becomes a case. And in cases, documentation wins. The mortgage grace period expires in 6 days. The refinance is stalled. Camille's image is cracking. And Daniel still believes he can negotiate me back into compliance. He cannot. Because when a woman decides to stop funding her own disrespect, the shift is permanent. Next, the bank makes a call that neither Daniel nor Camille expected. Consequences like mortgages come due on schedule. The bank called on a Thursday morning. Not Daniel, not Camille, the bank. "Mrs. Harper," the representative said carefully, "we're confirming that you are no longer providing secondary liquidity backing for the Harper residential mortgage." "I am not," I replied. There was a pause. "As of today, the loan has entered formal default status. A notice of intent to accelerate will be issued within 72 hours. I wrote the date down, time, representative's name. Documentation is not emotional, it is factual. "Thank you for informing me," I said. After I hung up, I didn't feel triumph. I felt confirmation. Structures collapse when foundations are weak, not when support is removed. Daniel called 22 minutes later. "Did you talk to the bank?" "Yes." "Why would they contact you?" "Because for the past 8 months I've been the quiet stabilizer." Silence. "You didn't tell them to call the note, did you?" "I told them nothing beyond truth." His breathing sharpened. "They're issuing a notice of acceleration?" "Yes. That means the entire balance becomes due." "I understand how mortgages work," I said softly. "Mom, this isn't funny." "I'm not laughing." Camille's voice cut in sharply from his side. "Ask her what she wants." Daniel lowered his voice again. "What do you want?" He still thinks this is negotiation. "I want you to understand something," I said calmly. "A house built on borrowed dignity is unstable. This is about pride. This is about responsibility. You're destroying us over a technicality." "No," I replied, "you're facing the math." He went quiet. Daniel has always hated math. Not numbers, he loves numbers when they make him look successful. He hates accountability arithmetic. "We can list it," he said finally. "Sell before foreclosure, that would be wise, but it'll look bad." There it was, optics, always optics. "Reputation recovers," I said. "Credit sometimes does not." He let out a frustrated laugh. "You're enjoying this?" "No," I answered honestly. "I'm relieved." "For what?" "For clarity." He didn't respond, because clarity feels like punishment to people who live in assumption. Later that afternoon, Camille posted a photograph online. Perfect lighting, perfect smile. Caption, building stronger foundations for the future. Perception creates reality, unless reality documents itself. That evening, Sophie texted again. Grandma, are we moving? I stared at the message longer than I expected. That depends on decisions being made, I replied. Mom says you're teaching Dad a lesson. Children translate adult chaos simply. No, I wrote back, I'm teaching him consequences. 3 dots, are they different? Yes, very different, but I didn't type that. Instead, I wrote, one hurts, one changes behavior. She didn't respond. At 9:18 p.m., Detective Raymond Cole called. Mrs. Harper, I need to inform you of something. I'm listening. Your son contacted a financial advisor yesterday attempting to demonstrate that you may be acting under undue influence. I didn't speak for a moment. Undue influence? A legal phrase, a dangerous one. He implied someone is advising you to destabilize your family relationship for personal gain. Meaning Claudia Mercer, I said. Likely. I closed my eyes briefly. Daniel wasn't just panicking, he was escalating. Detective, I asked calmly, does that change your assessment? It reinforces it, he replied. This is moving from entitlement to narrative construction. Narrative construction. Control the story, control perception, Camille's specialty. Is there evidence of coercion? He continued. No, then this is defensive positioning. If he continues, it could strengthen a financial exploitation case. I'm not filing charges, I said. Not yet, he corrected gently. After the call, I sat in my study with the revised estate documents in front of me. Claudia had added a clause I hadn't considered before. Discretionary disinheritance for attempted financial coercion. I read it twice. Daniel believes eventual security is guaranteed. He has not yet realized that inheritance is not entitlement. It is stewardship. The next morning, he arrived again. This time without knocking. He used his old key. I was waiting in the foyer. You should have asked before using that, I said calmly. He looked startled. Mom, we need to talk urgently. You no longer have automatic access here. He ignored that. The bank sent a certified notice. I know. They're giving us 30 days before formal foreclosure proceedings. That's standard. You're calm, he said almost accusingly. I prepared. He ran a hand through his hair again. Camille thinks you're trying to ruin us. I am trying to separate myself. From your own family? Yes. The word still surprised him. He paced across my hardwood floor. You could fix this with one transfer. I could, I agreed. Then why won't you? Because this is the moment. The moment where a woman either continues financing disrespect or ends it permanently. Because, I said slowly, your stability cannot depend on my silence. He stopped pacing. That's dramatic. No, I replied, that's structure. He stared at me for a long moment. You've changed. No, I said gently. I stopped tolerating. He didn't like that answer. None of them ever do. Fine, he snapped. If we sell, it'll be below market. Then you absorb the loss, and if investors see this, they will see reality. He exhaled sharply. You always said you wanted Sophie secure. I do. Then how does this help her? By teaching her that security is earned, not extracted. But I didn't say that aloud. Instead, I asked, what does she see when you try to pressure me? He didn't answer, because he knows she hears everything. As he walked toward the door, I added one more thing. Daniel, he paused, the key. He hesitated. Then slowly he placed it on the entry table. A small metallic sound, but symbolically enormous. He left without another word. And for the first time, the house felt entirely mine again. What Daniel does not yet know is that the attempted undue influence narrative has been documented formally. He does not know that Claudia has scheduled a protective filing to preempt any guardianship claims. He does not know that the 4 words I will eventually say are already decided. The grace period ends in 28 days. The house is unstable. Camille's brand depends on the illusion of permanence. And Daniel is beginning to understand that leverage only works when the other party fears loss. I do not. Next, a public notice will appear that Camille cannot edit, cannot curate, and cannot spin. And that is when panic becomes visible. It went public on a Monday. Foreclosure filings always do. 9:03 am. Claudia Mercer sent me the link first. Subject line, filed, no emotion, no commentary, just documentation. I opened the county clerk's site. There it was. Notice of default, Harper, Daniel, and Camille, address, loan number, outstanding balance, public record, perception meets paperwork. I closed the browser and poured myself tea, chamomile. Steady hands, measured breath. 27 minutes later, my phone rang. Camille, not Daniel, that told me everything. Vivian, she said sharply, skipping pleasantries, do you understand what you've done? Yes, you humiliated us. I removed myself. It's public. Most legal filings are. Her breathing quickened. My clients can see this. You should have considered that before structuring debt around assumed inheritance. Silence, then anger. You've always resented us. No, you hate that we built something bigger. No, you're jealous. I almost smiled. Auditors don't get jealous, they get accurate. This has nothing to do with size, I said calmly. It has to do with sustainability. You could fix this with one wire. Yes, and you won't. No, she lowered her voice, changed tactics. Sophie is scared, I know. She asked if we're poor. And what did you tell her? That we're restructuring. I wrote that down, date, time, statement. Camille mistook the silence for weakness. You're punishing us because we didn't need you? No, I corrected. You needed me, you just didn't want to admit it. That hit, I heard it in the pause. You've always controlled the money, she said finally. Like it made you powerful? No, I replied softly. It made me responsible. She hung up, not dramatic, not explosive, just severed. An hour later, Daniel called. You spoke to Camille? Yes, she's spiraling. That tends to happen when illusions fracture. This isn't about illusions, he snapped. This is about survival. Then adapt. We listed the house. That's wise, at a discount. Consequences are rarely profitable. He was pacing, I could hear it in his steps. Investors are asking questions. Answer them truthfully. You're ruthless? No, I said, I'm disciplined. He went quiet, then Detective Cole contacted my office. That surprised him more than me. What did he say? I asked calmly. That there are concerns about attempted coercion. Yes, you involved law enforcement. I involved documentation. You're treating me like a criminal. You attempted a power of attorney narrative. You forced me to, no. He chose that. I forced nothing, I said gently. You escalated. He exhaled sharply. You're going to destroy our reputation? No, I said, you are. Silence, heavy this time, because deep down Daniel understands markets. And markets punish instability. That afternoon, Sophie showed up unannounced. Alone. She rang the bell and stood with her backpack hanging off one shoulder. I opened the door. Hi, Grandma. Hi, darling. She stepped inside slowly. Are we losing the house because of you? Direct, clear, unfiltered. No, I said, you're losing it because of choices. She studied my face. Dad said you're making a point. I am. What is it? That security isn't borrowed. She nodded slowly. I heard Mom say you're rewriting your will. Children hear more than adults think. Yes. Does that mean Dad gets nothing? Ah, there it is, eventual security. It means, I said carefully, that money follows behavior. She absorbed that. So if I behave well, I get some? I smiled. It's not about behaving for money, it's about integrity. She thought about that, then quietly, I don't want to be scared about houses. Neither did I know, I said softly. She hugged me tighter than usual before leaving. That night I called Claudia. It's accelerating, I said. Yes, she replied. Public filings change tone. I want to move forward. With which provision? The discretionary clause. There was a pause. That's permanent. I'm aware. You're certain? Yes. Because this isn't about revenge, it's about architecture. Claudia's voice softened slightly. I'll draft the final revision. Add one more element. Yes, a conditional trust for Sophie. Education bound, released at maturity. Protected from parental control? Yes. She didn't hesitate. Consider it done. After we ended the call, I sat in my study with the lights off, just the lamp on my desk. I thought about Daniel as a child. The way he used to line up his toy buildings in perfect rows, already obsessed with structures. Somewhere along the way, he forgot that structures require support beams, not performance. At 10:17 p.m., Daniel texted, "We have an offer." I didn't respond immediately. He followed up, below market, but fast close. Finally, I replied, "Accept it." 3 minutes later, "You really won't help?" I stared at that question. For years, help meant funding imbalance. Now help means allowing consequence. No, I typed. He didn't respond. What Daniel doesn't realize is that this isn't the collapse, this is the correction. The house will sell, the brand will shift. The image will adjust, but something else is happening quietly. Detective Raymond Cole has opened a preliminary file. Not charges, not yet, but a record. And records don't disappear. Camille believes perception creates reality. Daniel believes inheritance is inevitable. They are both wrong, because next the buyer will ask a question that forces Daniel to choose between ego and exposure. And for the first time, he may realize that his mother's gentleness was never weakness. It was restraint. The buyer didn't ask about the granite. He didn't ask about the custom lighting or the imported marble Camille had once filmed for her followers with the caption "Timeless Luxury." He asked one question. Why is the property in default? Daniel called me the moment that question landed. They're doing enhanced due diligence, he said, voice tight. Because of the public notice. That's standard, I replied. No, Mom, this isn't standard. The buyer is an investment group. They pulled background. On the property, on us. Silence stretched between us. When reputation is your currency, background checks feel like interrogation. They asked if there were pending legal matters, Daniel continued. Are there? I asked calmly. Another pause. He exhaled. Detective Cole contacted the lender again. Yes, you didn't tell me that. I don't update you on protective measures. They're implying attempted financial exploitation. They're documenting patterns. You're turning this into something criminal. No, I said softly. Your behavior did that? He lowered his voice. If that becomes official, the brokerage will suspend me. That was the first honest fear he had expressed, not the house, not the embarrassment, his license, his leverage. Then you should be very careful, I said. He grew frustrated. You're enjoying watching this unravel. I am observing it, I corrected. That's cold. No, I replied. It's controlled. He hung up abruptly. 40 minutes later, Camille called. Her voice was different this time. Not sharp, not angry, calculated. The buyer wants a written explanation of the default, she said. That's reasonable. They want confirmation there's no pending litigation. Is there, Vivian? Yes. If Daniel's brokerage thinks he's involved in elder financial coercion, we're finished. You should have thought of that before attempting power of attorney manipulation. You're exaggerating. No, she lowered her tone further. We were trying to protect our family. By questioning my mental capacity, she didn't answer, because there was no graceful version of that. We need you to state in writing that this is simply a financial disagreement, she continued. There it was, narrative control. If that is inaccurate, I said, I will not state it. It's not inaccurate. It is incomplete. You're splitting hairs. No, I replied gently. I'm distinguishing facts. Silence. Then she pivoted. Sophie asked me if you still love us. That caught me off guard. I love Sophie, I said carefully. And Daniel, I love him enough to let him face consequences. She scoffed. That's not love. Yes, I said, it is. She hung up. That evening, Detective Raymond Cole called. The buyer's legal team requested clarification regarding the power of attorney attempt, he said. On what grounds? They're risk-averse. They don't want entanglements. I see. There's still no formal charge, he added, but the pattern is concerning. I understand. Are you prepared to escalate if necessary? The question hung there. Escalation changes everything. Yes, I said, because protection without enforcement is suggestion. After that call, I phoned Claudia Mercer. The sale may collapse, I told her. That would be inconvenient, she said evenly. Inconvenient for them, I clarified. She understood immediately. Are you reconsidering your position? She asked. No, then remain consistent. I will, she paused. I finalized the trust revision for Sophie. Education bound? Yes, fully shielded. Released at age 25. And Daniel? Discretionary, contingent on financial responsibility and absence of coercive behavior. Good, inheritance is not an entitlement, it is a reflection. The next day, Daniel showed up again. This time he looked different, less polished, more strained. They're reconsidering the offer, he said immediately, because they believe there's undisclosed liability. There is reputational liability, I said calmly. Mom, this is spiraling. No, I replied. It is correcting. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing my foyer again. If the sale collapses, foreclosure becomes official. Yes, that follows me forever. So do attempted coercion records. He stopped pacing. You keep using that word because it applies. He stared at me for a long moment. Fine, he said finally. What do you want from me? There it was, not money, not negotiation, direction. I want acknowledgement, I said. For what? For assuming my assets were yours. He hesitated. That's not fair. It's accurate. He clenched his jaw. We thought it was family support. No, I said softly. You thought it was inevitable. Silence. Then finally. I shouldn't have tried to question your capacity. That was the first crack. Small but real. And, I prompted, and I shouldn't have structured finances around future inheritance. There it was, the truth, not polished, not deflected, raw. I nodded slowly. That's correct. He looked exhausted. So what happens now? You sell the house. And the investigation depends on future behavior. He swallowed. You'd really press charges if necessary, he nodded once. That scared him more than foreclosure, because markets can recover. Records do not disappear. Later that night, Sophie called again. Grandma, yes, darling. Dad looked scared today. Sometimes fear teaches. Are we moving for sure? Yes. She was quiet. Is it bad that I feel kind of relieved? I paused. Why relieved? Mom was always stressed about keeping it perfect. There it was, the house wasn't stability, it was pressure. No, I said gently. Relief means something was too heavy, she sighed. I just want things honest. So do I. After we hung up, I sat alone in my study. The house was quiet, my house, paid for, documented, stable. Daniel believed leverage was inherited. Camille believed perception created reality. But markets, banks, detectives, and legal filings are immune to perception. The buyer will decide within 48 hours. If they withdraw, foreclosure proceeds. If they proceed, Daniel salvages part of his reputation. Either way, the illusion is gone. After this, Daniel will ask me one question that reveals whether he has truly learned the difference between support and ownership. 4 words are waiting, and when I say them, everything will shift. The buyer stayed, barely. 46 hours after their due diligence review, Daniel texted, they're moving forward, reduced price, fast close. I read the message twice. Relief but expensive. Loss always charges interest. He called immediately after. They required a written statement, he said. From whom? From me. And I acknowledged financial mismanagement. That surprised me. In writing, I asked. Yes. Without blaming anyone, a pause. Yes, progress rarely announces itself loudly. It shows up in reluctant accountability. The brokerage? I asked. They put me on internal review, no suspension, yet consequences often arrive in installments. And Camille? I asked. She's adjusting. That meant panicking privately. She's rebranding the move, he added, downsizing intentionally, minimalist pivot. Perception creates reality or tries to. Is Sophie all right? I asked. She's quiet, listen to her. He didn't respond. Silence again, but this time it felt different, less defensive, more uncertain. Mom, he said finally, can I ask you something? Yes. Did you ever plan to cut me out completely? There it was. The real fear, not foreclosure, not reputation, erasure. I plan to protect myself, I said. That's not what I asked. No, I replied calmly. It's the foundation of the answer. He exhaled slowly. I need to know if I destroyed everything. Destroyed, interesting choice of word. You damaged trust, I said. Trust can be rebuilt. Entitlement cannot. Silence. I didn't realize how much we depended on you, he admitted quietly. That was honest. Dependency feels invisible when it's normalized. I didn't realize how much you assumed, I replied. He didn't argue, that mattered. The house closes in 2 weeks, he said. We'll rent for now, that's sensible. He hesitated again, then, what are the 4 words? I didn't speak for a moment. He had remembered, from the last time we argued. From the moment I told him that when the time came, I would only say 4 words. You'll know, I said, that's not fair. Growth rarely feels fair. He almost laughed, almost. After we ended the call, I phoned Claudia Mercer. He acknowledged mismanagement in writing, I said. That's strategic for him, she replied. It's still accountability. Yes, she agreed, but don't confuse fear with transformation. I appreciated her precision. Has Detective Cole escalated? She asked. No formal charges. Good, protection doesn't always require prosecution. Later that evening, Sophie came by again, this time with a notebook in her hands. Grandma, yes, Dad said we're moving to an apartment. Yes. She sat at my kitchen table, flipping open her notebook. I'm making a list of what matters. That caught my attention. What's on it so far? I asked. She read aloud. Privacy, peace, not yelling about money, not pretending. Children summarize dysfunction with startling clarity. That's a good list, I said. She looked up at me. Grandma, were you scared? Yes. Of what? Losing myself. She nodded like that made perfect sense. I don't want Dad to lose himself, she said quietly. Neither did I, but losing illusions is not the same as losing identity. It depends on what he builds next, I said. She closed her notebook. Mom keeps saying perception is everything. And what do you think? I think reality catches up. I smiled. Yes, I said softly, it does. 2 weeks later, the closing happened. No celebration, no dramatic collapse. Just signatures, transfer of ownership, loss absorbed. Daniel called that evening. It's done. Yes, we're out. And it feels smaller. Smaller can be stable. He didn't disagree. There was a long pause then. I was wrong. He didn't elaborate. He didn't dramatize it. Just 4 simple words. I absorbed them quietly. Because sometimes the apology is not grand. It is reluctant, earned, stripped of ego. I know, I said. He waited. Maybe expecting absolution, maybe expecting comfort. Instead, I asked, what will you build now? That question lingered between us, because this chapter isn't about loss, it's about reconstruction. Detective Cole has left the file open but inactive. Claudia finalized the trust revisions. Sophie's education fund is secured, protected from interference. Daniel's inheritance is now conditional, not erased, not promised, earned. Camille continues curating images, but fewer filters now. And Daniel finally understands something he never calculated. Eventual security is not assumed. It is deserved. Next, I will say the 4 words, not in anger. Not in revenge, but in clarity. And when I do, the silence on the other end of the line will mean something very different than it once did. The apartment was smaller. Daniel didn't tell me that. Sophie did. It echoes, she said over the phone one afternoon. Not like the old house. It sounds real. Real, that word again. 3 weeks after the closing, Daniel called, not urgently, not defensively. Quietly. Mom, do you have a minute? I do. There was background noise, dishes maybe, no marble countertops now, no vaulted ceilings amplifying confidence. I've been thinking, he said, about everything. That was new. I spent years structuring deals, he continued, always leveraging what I had or what I expected to have. Yes, and I never questioned the expectation. There it was, the inheritance assumption, the invisible safety net. I built risk into my life because I believed you would absorb it. He didn't dress it up, didn't soften it, just truth. That's accurate, I said calmly. I told myself it was family support. It was dependency, I corrected gently. Yes, he admitted, silence, not hostile, not tense, reflective. I lost more than the house, he said finally. What did you lose? Control? No, you lost illusion, I said. Another pause, then something shifted in his voice. I don't want Sophie thinking security comes from someone else's bank account. Good, growth sounds like responsibility. I opened a new savings account, he continued. Automatic deposits, no leverage. No assumption? That's wise. And I met with a financial advisor, no shortcuts this time. Progress rarely announces itself loudly. It shows up in changed patterns. There was a long, quiet moment. Then he asked, do you still see me as a risk? That question mattered. Yes, I said honestly, but less than before. He exhaled. I deserve that. Yes, he did. I need to hear something from you, he said quietly. Here it comes. The moment that has been building for 8 chapters. You said you'd tell me 4 words. I let the silence sit. Not for drama, for weight, because words are architecture, they either reinforce or collapse. You remember what I said? I asked. Yes, good. My voice stayed soft, steady, measured. I am not obligated. Silence, not defensive silence, not angry silence, processing silence. 4 words, I am not obligated, not to fund instability, not to rescue ego, not to finance disrespect. Just 4 words. He didn't interrupt. He didn't argue. He didn't deflect. After several seconds he spoke, you're right. No justification, no negotiation, just acceptance. That doesn't mean I don't care, I added. I know, he said, and for the first time in months I believed him. Later that evening, I met with Claudia Mercer to finalize the estate documents. Are you comfortable with the revisions? She asked. Yes. Sophie's trust is secure. Good. Daniel's conditional structure remains in place, as it should. Claudia studied me for a moment. You could restore full inheritance. I could, I agreed. But security without accountability is instability delayed. She nodded. You're certain? Yes, because love does not mean underwriting dysfunction. 2 days later, Detective Raymond Cole called. Mrs. Harper, I'm closing the preliminary file. No charges, no escalation. Your son has ceased coercive attempts. Thank you. May I offer something personal? You may. Most cases like this don't end with awareness, he said. They end with prosecution? I documented early. Yes, he replied. That made the difference. Documentation protects dignity. Sophie visited that weekend. She sat at my kitchen table again, notebook in hand. Dad's different, she said. How? He listens more. That's good. He told me security isn't inherited. I smiled slightly. What did you tell him? That reality catches up. We both laughed softly. She looked at me seriously then. Grandma, are we okay? That word matters. Yes, I said, but okay looks different now. She nodded like she understood more than a 12-year-old should. Before she left, she hugged me tightly. Thanks for not pretending, she whispered. I held her a little longer because honesty feels safer than luxury ever did. That night, Daniel texted, Thank you for not destroying me. I stared at that message, then replied. You rebuilt yourself? No applause, no celebration, just truth. Camille eventually adjusted too. Her content shifted. Less curated, more practical. I don't know if it was transformation or necessity, maybe both. But I stopped monitoring it because my peace is no longer tied to their perception. I sit now in my paid-for home, my study quiet, my investments stable, my documentation intact. The house Daniel lost was large, but the stability he's building now may be stronger. Eventual security was never a promise. It was a possibility, and possibility requires discipline. If you're watching this and wondering whether boundaries make you cold, let me tell you something. They don't, they make you stable. Love without boundaries becomes leverage. Generosity without limits becomes expectation. I am 73 years old. Soft-spoken, detail-oriented, gentle, they say, but gentleness is not surrender. And when my son finally asked what he was owed, I answered with 4 words that changed everything. I am not obligated, not to fix what I didn't break, not to fund what I don't approve, not to rescue grown men from their own assumptions. And here's the real lesson. When a woman stops underwriting her own disrespect, the world recalibrates. Quietly, precisely, permanently. The silence that followed those 4 words wasn't the sound of loss. It was the sound of understanding, and that is stronger than inheritance.